From an undisclosed location in the upper Michigan Peninsula, it's Beyond the Near Horizon featuring Colonel Stephen Prather. Now here's your host, Colonel Stephen Prather.
Thank you, Stephanie. It is Monday, February 20th. To all of those of you listening to us from the protected zone, occupied territories, lunar outposts, Martian colonies, and connected via neural, we're pleased to have you join us here for the next little while as we take another journey into the darkness beyond the crest of the vanishing point and infinitely onward. Quick note. After yesterday's glitch, Stephanie called in a medtech to have her interface array tissues inspected. Turns out that when she exited the transport on Sunday morning, she slipped and took a header and accidentally enabled her Lucinda circuit. This was a factory built-in and supposedly not invocable. Well, needless to say, the folks at the old Jordasher Human Extension Clinic either didn't know it or forgot to mention it, but it was the 30s and things were different then. Just to be super clear, Stephanie's comments while she was in Lucinda mode on pregnancy, French onion dip, and bedwetting are not the opinions of this show. Not even Stephanie's, as it turns out. But in the interest of the listener, we have been watching the show board, and opinion was pretty inconclusive. So we've got new polls up on Shudder, Burn, and Liar. Do hit us up if you want more of Lucinda, or if you want to stick with the old reliable. Just a reminder to turn your locator off to avoid message doubling. No reason Amazon needs to know your thoughts on the subject. We've got a heck of a program lined up for you tonight. We're going to be speaking with our friend and renowned author Enoch Price, who will be checking in with another installment of our ongoing Singularity Watch. And man, I've never seen people swarm like they did at that Potbelly Sam's last night. Of course, we've reimbursed Enoch for his blazer, but to be fair, he's a pretty sharp dresser, and that sort of thing will make you a target. Also, and in the main, we will be visiting with Chad Rodondo, grandson of a regular on this program, Father Ricardo Rodondo. We'll discuss his new memoir, The Weeping Sofa, Escaping from My Grandfather's Nest of Lies. Then we'll catch up on the work he does with his nonprofit, the Vile Foundation. Let me get this out of the way early. We're still having issues with our neural channel. I'm embarrassed to say that if you try SyncCom, and I wouldn't recommend you do, the autoresponder is stuck on a pretty gruesome limerick about pig farming. It's a burrower, so you'll be stuck with it until you do a full reset. Our email is also down, as there is a bit mining scheduled. And as I've explained many times, there's no way in Hades we're going to pay the frickin' ransom they charge for the Satoshi Paradise plan. I'd sell my mother's regen chip first. Well, now that I remember, I did sell that, but you get the point. So this will be a little inconvenient, but if you want to reach out to us, switch over to your legacy comm and hit us up on the Higher Plane hotline at 800-438-4444 or 800-GET-HIGHER, spelled HIRR. Just speak or use tone generation to dial. If you plan to send documents or images, we also broke out the old Milken Model 2. So if you're close to a museum, shoot over there and fax us while we work on whatever's causing this latest digital furball. Don't forget to memload for fax machine before you leave in case the museum is off network. Next segment here is brought to you by Kickshaw Human Kibble. Kick the habit of bland rations. If you live in a high monitoring zone, Kickshaw Human Kibble comes in a variety of flavors, from roasted garlic to tomato pasta, and their new relaxation and freedom formulas. Dine with the name you can trust, Kickshaw Human Kibble. Ordering available in all standard interfacing. Enjoy some KHK today. So, on comm now, of course, we have it over terrestrial. Our good friend Enoch Price joins us from Stu's Rib Kingdom, right on the border of the Baltimore Protectorate. Enoch, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Colonel. I am likewise experiencing technical difficulties after yesterday's brutal assault. I managed to pick up an old iPhone from an antique shop across the Bill Mummy Parkway nearby. I'd forgotten how idiotic and tiresome holding a piece of metal and glass to one's ear could be, particularly when covered as I am in scratches and welts.
Well, we appreciate the effort, and my friend, I am just baffled as a lounge singer as to what happened to the Quakers. I understand you're in safe quarters today.
This is true. The somewhat hesitant proprietor of Stew's Rib Kingdom has stowed your humble correspondent in a refrigerated room adjoining the kitchen.
All right.
Normally this might be the source of complaint, or even panic, but as it is 128 degrees this evening in Baltimore, I welcome the Arctic sensation. These are the unexpected fruits of climate change, I suppose.
Well, and I remind you, the jury's still out on climate change. It is nice that it's cooled down a little, though. For folks listening or linked, I'll mention that while there are many scales on which the singularity declaration depends, those include the old Kurzweil standard, the Berlin Conference, and the Nicole Ritchie test, to name a few. None of the outlets have called it yet. But even if they had, I put my trust in the one you developed, Enoch. For those that might be tuned in for the first time or haven't mem-filed it, Enoch, you want to recap that criteria again?
With pleasure, of course. In my view, these are simple and obvious events that make it clear that, once achieved, we would have ascended to the next great plateau of human existence. Number 1, sentient vegetables. 2, the sudden mass renaming of all human females to the name Rhonda. 3, Jake Paul II finally loses an election. 4, the eradication of mucus. Finally, 5, a global run-on and complete depletion of home-style coleslaw.
You've maintained that the last of these is actually the likely first domino to fall, if I'm right.
Coleslaw, when properly prepared in its home-style form, is truly unlike any other consumable substance in the universe. Its ingredients deceivingly simple, and yet it challenges every assumption. How can it be creamy and crunchy at once? Is it sweet or is it bitter? The question brings me on this 52nd night of the Singularity Watch to Stew's Rib Kingdom.
Well, and it turns out Potbelly Sam's actually removed it from their menu, which makes last night's incident sting a bit.
Let me not mince this response, my friend. Their indignity is nothing short of the unsheathed blade thrust deep into my trusting flank. I will mourn our severed relationship, but I can never again break bread with this turncoat corporate actor.
Understandable. How are the coleslaw levels looking there right now?
Underperforming at present.
Oh.
I can see through the window of the walk-in door 2 trays, roughly containing 15 quarts apiece of the beloved substance. Only a single scoop has been removed from the tray to the left.
That's super bizarre. I wonder if this is blowback from that wildlife intrusion in 42. Do they still have an issue with squirrels?
Hold on a moment.
Granted, they weren't normal.
Hold on a moment.
Squirrels.
There's a commotion at the front of the house.
Can you see what kind of squirrels there
Shouting.
are?
2 of the servers have just burst through the door, screaming at one another. A strange thing to observe this in silence from this sealed viewing room
Well,
of sorts.
I wonder if it's a personal beef. Do they look like they might be in a romantic relationship?
The taller of the 2, a pale and, from what I can see, undernourished waiter, is hurling explicatives at the other.
All right.
His badge bears the name Dougie. Alas, I think this may simply be a rude customer.
Oh.
He's unhooked the autoserver next to the slaw and shoved it to the side. The plate in one hand, he's reaching down. Oh, God, no!
Enoch, what's going on there,
I've got
Enoch?
to get out there. The door. This damn door is locked.
Get a stick.
They've locked me in. No, my pale friend, don't do this.
Get a stick,
Listen
Enoch.
to me. Dougie, if you can hear my voice, you're about to commit I
Enoch?
can't look upon it.
Enoch, what happened?
I am diminished. I feel as though I have been among the spectators of 1618, the brave Sir Walter Raleigh, is no more.
So they killed a customer. Well, that's going to hurt the tip.
My good Colonel, I just watched a man, consumed with barbaric anger, crush the most delicate and precious of flowers. Before my eyes he freed and then aimed his putrid member upward so as to rain an arc of warm urine, like incendiary at the Battle of Kaishi, down onto two pristine bins of perfectly crafted coleslaw. He gleefully proceeded to scoop a mound of this defiled innocence afterwards onto a plate, which he presumably returned to the dining patron. Fate, in the form of this stainless steel door, prevented all intervention on my part.
What about the baked beans? Do you think they're okay?
They may have been compromised. It is impossible to know the full trajectory of that splashing foulness. I can say for certain that the collard greens were in the red zone. They joined the coleslaw, okra, and sweet potato mash in the great afterlife.
Any more spots around Baltimore we can set up for tomorrow night, maybe? A limping carny could do better than we're doing here.
There comes a moment when we tire of running, my simple friend. I will remain here at Stew's Rib Kingdom. I have already eyed a package of sealed haddock, more than capable of piercing the glass of this humiliatingly small viewing aperture. When I have released myself, I will help these people rebuild. It is on this hill that we will obtain our victory. No more retreats.
Well, that's a good reminder. I think I'll order some marinated riblets from the stews next door here. Sure don't want to give up on those good people. All right. Enoch Price, folks, once again straddling the line between the distant past and our certain robotic subservient future. All brought to you courtesy of Kickshaw Human Kibble. For every 500th bag you purchase, half a bag will be sent to a North American monitoring zone of your choice to help give back to communities struggling with malnutrition and ex-bio famine. Don't delay. Grab 2 or 3 bags of KHK. When we resume, birthdays and regions do come back. I have a confession to make. The last few years, I have started to put on the pounds. I was never an Olympian, but I'm not in Regen 1 anymore, and it seems I have to wave off anything that might threaten to taste good. And while I know my beloved Arcadia is programmed to desire me, I would still like to look the part. And I'm not looking for a reskin for obvious reasons, and while acid pills sound good in theory, the earthquake intensity intestinal discomfort that they encourage isn't exactly beckoning me to the pharmacy. Well, you may recall about a month back we had Dr. Murphy Ludris join us and explain why he has turned his back on traditional weight loss medicine. Dr. Ludris confirmed through hard science what many of us suspected, that fat cells are in fact a demonic order. Folks, it's why I'm holding in my hand a Ludris weight loss incantation guide. 50 incantations for a variety of common trouble zones, illustrated in a rich full-color comic strip format. Dr. Ludris offers a spell to direct at every nook and cranny on your body that might be harboring the offspring of Satan. I recite my waistline burning spell every morning. Not only can it be done in minutes, but let me recommend to you turning off the lights when you go number 2. It is quite a sight to see anything flaming exit your body. Best of all, you don't have to change your diet. I hope I've lit a fire under you and convinced you to pick up a copy of the Ludris Weight Loss Incantation Guide, purchased with as little as 2.4 transition credits, 5600 bit, or the good old dollar. Trading rates may vary at time of purchase. Available on Thrice Pygmy and a variety of information distributors. Grab a memload or physical copy today and start murdering your fat cells the Ludris way. Just saw this come over the AP bot. If you happen to be using the Euclidean or Pamplona generative AR, they got themselves hacked this evening. And it's putting dog heads on everything, mostly terriers. for what it's worth. They've shut down Port LaGuardia until further notice. Can't say I blame them. Can you imagine seeing a Cupid-cut Jack Russell slapped on the front of an 866? So be on the lookout for that if you're a user, although it doesn't sound like it's very hard to miss. Let's jump in here. This is a better birthday slate than we've had in a while. Getting right to it, former singer and coal reclamation baroness Rihanna is 57. I tend to be a natural skeptic, but Rihanna Cole again has some really effective ads. And I'm not a big coal guy, but you see a infant lying in a bed of that stuff, just makes you want to break out the grill. Dame Cindy Crawford is 79. I never bought into the fifth or sixth appendage thing, but she manages to pull it off. Speaking of grilling, do yourself a favor if you haven't streamed it and punch up some footage of her at a picnic. Uncanny stuff. Actor turned fish sculptor, French Stewart, is celebrating Regen 11. I didn't realize he was first wave. I imagined he used some of his Hollywood money for that. I feel a little bad for French, actually. I don't know if folks remember, but right before the second Kardashian riots, he was on what I think was a hilarious program called Just Stay Back. Unfortunately, that was a pretty poor sense of timing to have a show about crowd control, and ended with a whimper. Our loss is the sculpting world's gain, I suppose, but I still don't find anything erotic about groupers. What else? Synthetic wheat spokesperson and cat psychic Olivia Rodrigo is 42. I'm still determined to get her booked again, but it's going to have to be remote. That entourage is insane, and there's not enough litter in the world to protect this studio from the napalm her cadre can visit on you. Let's move on to some friends of the program. Medium Ginger Blogovist is celebrating Regen 2. It's been a few years, but you may recall she correctly predicted that former President Haley Joel Osment would be struck by an egg if he was elected to a second term. Now, you're going to find detractors that disqualify Ginger based on the fact that she threw the egg in question, but I still think it's pretty darn impressive. Next, we have half-bear, half-man Norwegian Lee Nettie. He's 71. I get synccoms about his whereabouts practically daily. The simple answer is that he's still stuck in that massive wiffle ball. I don't know how they plan to get him out. It was his choice to go in there, and seems to be pretty content with the consequences. So, happy birthday, Lee, and good luck, brother. Insect composer Gabrielle Calanth is celebrating a whopping Regen 14. If you're wondering, she is the oldest Regen I've ever met. And it's a ways back, but if you recall, the rumors back in 30 and 31 were all over the freaking place. As I've admitted every year since, I was wrong about the head replacement theory, at least about the timing of it. But you won't get me to ever rule it out entirely. There's nothing in this world as alluring as the possibility of switching heads at will with friends or strangers. But Gabrielle is not guilty of that. As far as we can tell, she did it the old-fashioned way. When we return, folks, Chad Rodondo will join us. You're not going to want to miss it. That's next. There's lots of old sayings about comparing your life to others. Grading yourself on someone else's scale courts more misery than anything I know. Not only can this prevent us from realizing our own potential, but when we do achieve success, it could bring about a needless guilty complex when I have to think of those that may have drawn the poverty card. Now, I know I've had advantages, just as anyone with a Regen count would. But life is short, and maybe like me, you're listening to this program thinking, do I have to be constantly reminded of all the inequity in the world? Now, what have I done that's such a disservice that I should lack even the simple pleasures of a backyard barbecue? Well, I'd like to introduce you to New Vista Pastures, who have released this month the New Vista Leisure Lantern Mark IV. This is by far the best perimeter obscuring projector on the market. One of my apartments in the city happens to be near a feeding center, And yes, while most days I will toss my scraps over the barrier fence, some days I need a break. If you've ever had a family of 7 watch you down a T-bone, synthetic or not, it just takes the joy right out of it. Well, replace all that smoke, noise, and people with a brilliant landscape fully on demand. Maybe you want to dine overlooking a recreation of the Okavango Delta in old Botswana. Just think it, and that team of disgruntled children straight out of a Dickens novel vanishes and is replaced by the sights and sounds of faraway, unspoiled perfection. Maybe you failed the colony exam and were robbed of your true potential. Well, dial up the steep Martian valleys of the Deuteralinus Mincy and experience the sights and sounds piped straight from mining camp DM3. I tried the lunar sequence once myself the night my own nephew Perth had a coronary in the driveway, and I had no idea he was mere feet away. That's the kind of audio-visual quality and fidelity we're talking about, not to mention I probably had the most popular anecdote at the funeral. So look into a subscription yourself starting at only 1.5 transition credits or around 2,000 bit. Memload the full AR today to get an idea of what you can expect. It's the new Vista Leisure Lantern Mark IV. Make your world disappear today. Now, this is a bit of a warped tin issue. We were receiving on Neural for about 30 seconds there, wrapping up for this interview. And the next instant, this dark cloud comes up on all the exterior monitors, and a bunch of wireless dropped. Got a couple of channels on here. I had Maurice pop his head out and check it, and it looks like we've had another gender reveal party in the annex. Now, full disclosure, and if you've heard it on the show before, we asked people to keep firearms away from the old dome. And while I congratulate these folks on a baby boy, it looks like the C4 they used damaged a retaining barrier, and we've got a little cesium-137 floating around. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Maurice for his 1.5 years on the show. It's been something of a whirlwind, and I'm only sorry I won't be able to pay him back that personal loan. Rest in peace, my friend. We're going to chat now with, I think, one of the more fascinating and frankly meta guests we've ever had. The next segment brought to you by Power Party Personal Ordnance and Pyrotechnic. Catapult your fun factor and show your friends and family how to truly entertain. Memload their Extreme AR today and learn about their customizable and lifelike explosive effigy line. Your grumpy colleague or work-release teenager won't laugh at anything harder than seeing themselves lofted skyward and detonated. Subscription prices when you connect Power Party Personal Ordnance and Pyrotechnic. Chad Rodondo first came to our notice in the late 20s when he washed up on Portugal's Algarve coast, clinging to a lavatory door from the doomed vessel the Margaret Mead at age 10. He claimed at that time that his own parents set the ship running and then hopped back onto the docks at the launch on Port St. Tennille, north of Daytona Beach. No charges were brought, but Chad grasped the opportunity to host a clip review show a few years later, That Neighbor Kid, often reenacting the various childhood accidents and dismemberments featured there. In 2041, he stepped away from hosting to executive produce and has been involved with various nonprofits, including the Nonprofit Abolition Convocation and the Weil Foundation, which we will be discussing today. He has just released his first nonfiction book, The Weeping Sofa, Escaping My Grandfather's Nest of Lies. Chad Rodondo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to your followers.
Right off the forehead strike here, a couple of things. Let me apologize for the lack of a neural connection. I know our audience would prefer to use the visualizer, and our ratings certainly suffer when we have to go terrestrial, so we apologize for that.
I'm not really what you would call dressed, so I'd say it's a win-win.
You have asked that this book not be referred to as a memoir.
It's a work of journalism, my friend.
Well, that's fair. Now, normally I would have memloaded the book, but I didn't have that opportunity here with all the technical issues we've been having, and I did manage to put my head down and read the table of contents, and we can use that to kind of guide our discussion. Now, you call the first chapter Early Warning. So what the heck's that about?
Like most of my book, it has double meaning. I understood at a delicate age that something was very wrong in the Rodondo clan.
I see.
I hope to educate humanity before it's too damn late.
Well, during this time, you were traveling with your grandfather on the cheese tasting circuit. He ran a burrata booth, but also practiced holistic medicine during this time, if I'm right.
My grandfather practically had snake oil running through his veins. We paid 3 different families to travel with us to see the crowd and attest to his so-called miracles. Their lurid catchphrase was, "God, why does it feel so good?" There's no defending it. The very idea of it is blasphemous.
You know, I'm surprised you're as religious as you are, considering the circumstances.
I don't have a religious fiber in me, my friend. You can go elsewhere to sell your tainted wares.
Well, to go back for a second, as for these cures, Father Ricardo, in his own book, seems to have taken a pretty darn scientific approach. It's actually a very dense read. I developed abdominal cramps a couple of paragraphs in, as memory serves. But the laboratory work on his elixir seems to be rigorous.
He lifted most of that book from a box of laxative brochures. Come on, man.
Commodore's Gate is a pretty reputable publishing house. Wouldn't you think they would have caught something that obvious?
Provided they could find someone to translate it to the original Hungarian little one. Commodore's Gate had a vested interest in seeing my grandfather's empire succeed. Only he could get away with writing thrillers featuring middle-aged clergy and a nubile flock of the weak and call it preventative literature.
Well, I can definitely say it's one of the reasons I decided not to become a priest, so I'm not sure how much I can share in that criticism.
No, I thought I detected an apologist. I assume you were sucked in by the sweepstakes magazine subscriptions. It often starts like that. All this supposedly in Christ's name.
Well, the decision to walk away wasn't without regret. Not every day you get the opportunity to play Father O'Malley in an all-samba production of the Bells of St. Mary. I mean, do you doubt the folks that claim to have been healed through your grandfather's pharmaceuticals?
I once saw my grandfather duct tape a hoverboard to a poor paraplegic woman's back at an eczema carnival in Portland, Maine. Is that your idea of healing?
I'm not sure I would complain. They gave them back some mobility. Isn't that the point?
She was very mobile when she entered the intersection, I'll give you that. No one in Harlem had ever seen anything like it, maybe in the movies.
I will have to move on here. You've named Chapter 3, Diamonds Are No One's Best Friend. I don't think I've ever met anyone who had a bad experience at Rodondo's Jewelers, myself included. Even my ex-wife, Marisol, managed to sell hers for a tidy sum when she was on the run after the flood at the Omaha Salt Park Expo.
Here's a picture for you. My grandfather had a habit of wearing a pair of Horace Batten English riding boots around the house. He would march around us and at random moments clutch the back of our necks in his hand, forcing us to sing passages from Paint Your Wagon or Flower Drum Song.
The German restaurant I eat at makes us put lipstick on before we eat, but you don't see me writing memoirs about it.
My father was also versed at this kind of equivocation. He was a fearful and cowering man. When grandfather returned from his trips to Angola on diamond interests, dear Daddy would provide hand pantomimes as we were regaled to stories of various horrors visited on the subjugated people we would never meet.
Well, Chuck Rodondo, God rest his soul, was a talented puppeteer. His version of fried green tomatoes remains the best in my humble opinion. And I don't even speak Vietnamese.
I include an account on page 249 of a mine foreman whom my grandfather forced to eat dried dog food out of a dish to reinforce discipline. How could anyone possibly justify that?
Well, not to nitpick, but I'd at least like to know the brand of dog food we're talking about before I pass any judgment. If we're talking about Lonesome Run Tinder Smoke Honey Chunks, we got a conversation. I fought off my cousin Fern's Mastiff for that stuff. Granted, it was right after a hind leg operation. Moving along. Now, the next to last chapter here has collected a lot of controversy on some other outlets. You named it Slop Cup.
You're going to find plenty of corporate detractors circling to protect the Rodondo cash cow. And yes, I felt Slop Cup summed it up nicely. Nothing removes the fact that I was raised with and by horses. I consider myself more of a horse than I do the grandson of an evil CEO of your mother's favorite conglomerate. I'm proud to subsist on the garden refuse of my neighbors, and they have learned to accept me.
Is this an overreaction to paint your wagon, though? He's wearing riding boots. You adopt the way of the horse. Quite a coincidence.
I was given no choice in the matter. I don't even own a mattress.
Are you telling me you sleep standing up?
Some of that is rumor. But I will drop to a kneeling position if I enter REM sleep. But like many horses, yes, I do sleep frequently during the day while standing.
I've got an issue of the New Star from a couple of weeks ago showing you seated at a birthday party. Now, how do you justify that betrayal of the horse culture you supposedly value? Chad, how do you justify that, if I may ask? Chad? All right. We'll take a small break here, folks. More with Chad Rodondo when we return. For nearly 50 years, we've been endlessly inundated with pressure to remake the classic cuisine of the world in plant-based forms. First it was the burger, then the chicken strip, then the porterhouse. It just snowballed from there. Unfortunately, we live in a world where, due to the march of technology, we just can't tell the difference anymore. From Beyond Meat back at the turn of the century to Ivan's imitation innards, there's very little in the world of the carnivore to enjoy anymore, at least not in the pure sense. I can hear John Wayne howling mournfully in the unforgiving winds of time. Well, there is hope. Enter the folks at Montana Fire, who are here to turn the tide and for once bail out the Duke. Well, they will send to you in mere minutes a variety of delicious vegetables: asparagus, cucumber, kale, romaine lettuce, Brussels sprouts, and much more. There's just one catch. It's all 100% made from American meat. It's Montana Fire's line of plant-shaped meats, and it's about to penetrate your meal planning. You're going to be running for the salad tongs after you try a head of iceberg lettuce skillfully crafted from freshly slaughtered mutton. And you'll never be without a few venison-powered sugar snap peas. Like you, the first thing I wondered about these little miracles was how they achieved such realistic results. Montana Fire gets that lifelike look and feel with a patent-declined mixture of polyurethane, along with additives that have a similar texture to all the vitamins we would normally find eating actual vegetables. Add Montana Fire to your news node and receive a different recipe every morning. My favorite so far is the Firebreaker, a green breakfast smoothie that really pops with a unique blend of savory braised pork shoulder. Every single cut reshaped into veg has been expertly sourced from the slaughter of a real animal at the Newark, New Jersey Montana Fire Slaughterhouse. Subscriptions start at 6 transition credits or 7,800 bit. If you take advantage of the Beyond the Near Horizon Bit Players discount. Put the meat back into your life with the Montana Fire line of plant-shaped meats. Take it from me, you'll know when you've got meat going through you again. Smell something? That's Montana Fire. Some good news. We found out that Chad is subscribed to the Push It Out fitness service, which I also happen to be a member of. Not my favorite feature, but when you DM someone on the platform, they register a shock on the Push It Out ankle bracelet. So, Chad, differences aside, sorry for the rude awakening.
I'm just happy to be awake again. I need to get my counts up in time to make some more serum.
Well, happy to help. Let's talk for a minute about one of your charitable initiatives, the Vile Foundation.
Well, for those who haven't connected to the site and read already, we're tearing down the old 20th century stereotypes around vampirism. A new era is upon us.
Now, with vampires, you have your sanguinarians, psychic, and...
Hybrid.
Right, hybrid.
Yes, they're all tired and feeble namesakes. We believe that it's time to break the chains of those tropes. We began on the psychic end of the spectrum, but very shortly a new king will rise over Egypt.
Now, you said we. Who else is part of the organization?
Casper and Harry Hitchcock. Years ago, they wrote the soundtrack for the Olsen twins biopic. We recognized that despite assurances, there were always whispers about knowingly feeding off the energy of others. The children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Granted, psychic and hybrids have long fed off large events like church services or concerts, but at the end of the day, we recognize that even in this anonymous way, we're consuming energy that someone did not choose to relinquish. It is robbery of the soul.
Maybe a little like having the Mexican tuna milk croissant you put in the fridge stolen and eaten by a stranger.
We quickly realized that the answer, especially amidst large crowds of people, had been floating among us the whole time. We needed to embrace energy in a literal and metaphysical sense, and when two or more people gather, there is a spike in a very specific kind of energy source.
Love?
Flatulence, gas. As few as 3 people easily introduce up to 120 milliliters of methane in the space of a few hours. It lays in abundance before us. Enough among us to power great interstellar airships until the end of time. Look, outside of the standard unmentionables, can you think of anything that human beings are consistently desperate to be rid of?
Well, I've never met anyone who collected it.
Now granted, this opportunity is not without its burdens. That good nature's breath tends to dissipate quickly. We can corral it using converted oxygen masks, but most folks are plain-minded and not amenable to that procedure.
Well, that happens. We ran into the same issue when we started selling vinyl socks at broadcasting conventions back in the day.
To be fair, there were a minority, great heroes in my mind, that were surprised at first, but then asked us to keep going. We've developed a sponsor program around them. They're among an intrepid few to witness transformation of vampiric culture.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck there. Fair to say that we disagree on your grandfather's legacy, but I appreciate your willingness to come on the program and ride the meerkat.
Well, I didn't assume it would really matter. When you've been in the putrid cultural ecosystem as long as you have, any hope of original thought or resistance to the illogical is likely rotted away like a struck possum on July asphalt. I feel more pity for you than anything else.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. I understand you have a podcast.
I don't, but my grandfather does. It's called the I Hate My Grandchild Tower of Power.
Well, I see eye to eye with Father Ricardo on most things, but I'm not sure if that's appropriate use of a podcast. All the same, folks, if you're curious, we'll have the link in the show notes on the site, so check it out if you're interested. Chad Rodondo, thanks for joining us.
I had little choice, my sweet boy.
Well, thanks also to Stephanie, our good friend Enoch Price, with the Singularity update. Maurice, who I think went out on a strong note, smooth running as usual on the boards. Big thanks to Pip and Henrietta at the Coal Exchange for the Crawdad Sorbet. Super interesting texture and aftertaste. Author Linda Prince Pine, guest host tomorrow. She will be welcoming silver investor Arnie Adele, who will be introducing all of us to the super wide benefits of chicory. Should be a great show. Until then, do not allow the ordinary distractions to thwart your search for wisdom and knowledge. All that and more may just be revealed beyond the near horizon. Good night.